The silence in my room isn't peaceful. It's a presence. I'm 76, and the brutal truth I learned is that living alone doesn't just mean you're by yourself. It means you've become optional. Let me tell you what happened. It started with a phone call. My daughter Sarah called. She was breathless. My birthday lunch was off. Her son had a soccer tournament. "You understand, Dad, right?" she asked. The words were a soft knife. I said, "Of course I did. I was the good sport." But hanging up, I looked at the calendar. The empty square for that Saturday stared back. A white void. To fill it, I went for a walk. I walked to the park. I saw young families, joggers, a world in motion. I felt invisible. I sat on the bench where Lisa and I used to feed the pigeons. A young man sat on the other end. He was on his phone. He never looked up. Not once. I was just part of the scenery. That night, I made a list at the kitchen table. I wrote down who called me last month. Sarah, twice. Both times about logistics. My son, David, once from his car. A robocall about my car warranty. That was it. Then I wrote down who I called. That list was longer. The math was brutal. I was the one keeping the threads from breaking. If I stopped, the silence would win. So I set a test, a foolish one. I decided I wouldn't call anyone first. I wanted to see how long it would take. The first day was easy. The second, I stared at the phone. By the fifth day, the silence was a roar in the house. I picked up the receiver just to hear the dial tone. The line wasn't dead. It was just dead to me. On the eighth day, it finally rang. I grabbed it. It was a recording. A chipper voice offering a free roof inspection. "Hello, how are you today?" it said. I was so pathetically grateful I listened to the whole thing. When it ended, I felt a shame that heated my face. I had waited 8 days for a robot. My need was that obvious. I broke my own rule right then. I called my grandson Ben. He's 17. He answered with a distracted, "Yo." I asked about his game. It was fine. We lost. I asked about school. It's okay. I could hear his thumbs tapping on a screen in the pauses. I was background noise. I ended with, "I love you, Ben." He said, "You too, Gramps." It was automatic, like a reflex. I was a task on his list. That was a Tuesday. The next morning, I reached for a can of soup on a high shelf. I lost my balance. I fell. I didn't fall hard, but I couldn't get up. My hip throbbed. I lay on the cold linoleum for an hour. I wasn't scared of the pain. I was terrified of the timeline. Sarah called on Sundays. It was Wednesday. The math was horrible. I managed to crawl to the phone. I didn't call 911. I called my neighbor, Marjorie. She's 78, a widow. She was at my door in 5 minutes. She didn't fuss. She helped me to the couch. She made tea. We sat. We didn't talk about the fall. We talked about the weather, a noisy trash truck, a bird at her feeder. She saw me, not as a problem, but as a person. Before she left, she put a hand on my shoulder. She said, "We have to watch out for each other, Martin. Nobody's coming to save us." It was the truest thing I'd heard in years. That changed everything. I realized I had it all wrong. Being optional to my kids' busy lives wasn't about my worth. It was just life, geography. But I wasn't optional to myself, or to Marjorie, or to Frank at the library who saves me history books. I started choosing my own circle. A week later, I went back to the park bench. I brought a book. The same young man was there, on his phone. When he got up to leave, he nodded at me. "Have a good one," he said. It was nothing, and it was everything. A sliver of recognition. I nodded back. "You too." So here's the truth. You do become optional to the world you once built. The calls become checklists. But that's only half the story. The other half is yours. You must choose to be essential to your own day. Make the tea, walk to the park, talk to your neighbor. Build a world that fits the quiet. If you know this loneliness, reach out. Not to the people too busy to hear you, but to the one right next door. Start the conversation. Your story isn't over. It's just waiting for you to turn the page. It's just waiting for you to turn the page. And you know what? I did turn it, but not the way I expected. After that day on the bench, I went home and I did something that felt a little silly. I called Marjorie, not because I needed anything. I just said, "I was thinking about what you said, about watching out for each other. Would you like to come over for coffee tomorrow?" There was a pause. I thought I'd overstepped. Then she said, "I'd like that, Martin. 10 o'clock? And just like that, I had a plan. A small one. The next morning, I cleaned the kitchen. I put out 2 mugs. When she came over, we sat at the table. We talked about our kids. She has a daughter in Denver she rarely sees. We talked about Eleanor. I showed her a photo from our wedding day. She told me about her husband, George, who died 5 years ago from a heart attack. Just like that. We didn't solve any big problems. We just shared the space. It was easy. When she left, she said, "Same time next week?" And I said yes. It became a thing. Every Tuesday. You see, I was building my own circle. But here's the thing about building something new. It makes you see the old cracks more clearly. One Sunday, Sarah called, right on schedule. She asked how I was. I told her I was fine, that I'd had coffee with my neighbor. She sounded surprised. "Oh, that's nice," she said. Then she rushed into the news about my grandson's grades. The conversation was the same as always, but I heard it differently now. I wasn't hurt. I was just listening. She was in her world, and I was starting to be in mine. And that was okay. Then, about a month later, I had a bad day. One of those days where the quiet felt heavy again. I thought about calling David, but I knew he'd be at work. I looked at the phone, but instead of feeling that old anxious pull, I put on my coat. I walked to the library. Frank, the librarian, saw me come in. He smiled and reached under the counter. He had a book for me, a new history book about the railroad. "Thought of you when this came in," he said. We talked for a few minutes about local history. It was just a chat, but it was a connection. It was real. I took the book and went to read it in the park. I was on my bench reading when I saw a woman about my age struggling with a grocery bag. It had split. Oranges were rolling everywhere. I got up and helped her gather them. She was flustered. Her name was Irene. We walked together toward our street. Turns out she lives just 3 blocks over. We talked about the price of fruit. By the time we got to her door, we'd made a plan to go to the farmer's market together the next week. It was that simple. That night I thought about the ledger I'd made, the one about who called who. I didn't make a new one. I didn't need to. The math didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was no longer waiting by the phone. I was living in my days. The loneliness still visits, sure. It comes like bad weather. But now I know it will pass. I have people to see, small things to do. I am optional to the busy, rushing world. But I am essential to this quiet one I'm making. To Marjorie, to Frank, to Irene, and most of all, to myself. That's the shift. That's the turn of the page. You stop waiting to be chosen, and you start choosing. You stop waiting to be chosen, and you start choosing. And you know what? That works. For a while. I built my little routines. Tuesdays with Marjorie, the library with Frank, the farmer's market with Irene. I felt steady. I thought I'd cracked it. I thought the loneliness was a problem I'd solved, like a leaky faucet I'd finally fixed. But then winter came, a real, gray, bitter winter, and the quiet came back. It was a different quiet this time. It wasn't the loud, roaring silence of waiting for the phone. It was a cold, hollow quiet, the kind that settles in your bones. It started with a Tuesday. Marjorie called to cancel coffee, a head cold. Of course, I said, feel better, and I meant it. But that Tuesday stretched out in front of me, long and empty. I didn't go out. I just sat. I looked at Eleanor's chair, and for the first time in months, I really let myself miss her. Not just the idea of her, but the specific, physical reality of her. The sound of her humming in the kitchen, the way she'd rest her hand on my shoulder when she walked by. That empty chair wasn't just a piece of furniture anymore. It was her absence, made solid. And I realized my new circle, as good as it was, couldn't fill that particular space. Nothing could. That's when the feeling started. This dread, this deep, cold understanding that this was it. This was the rest of my life. These small, careful connections, and this vast, empty house. The hardest moment came on a Thursday. It was snowing. Sarah called. She was excited. They were planning a big summer vacation, a cruise. All of them, David's family too. 2 weeks in the Mediterranean. She was talking a mile a minute about the ports, the ship, and then she said it. "Oh, Dad, you'd love the history there, the ancient ruins." There was a pause. I held my breath. I knew it was foolish, but I held it. Then she kept talking. "We'll have to send you pictures, tons of them." She didn't ask. She didn't even hint. I was an afterthought, a recipient of pictures. I felt my face go hot. I felt small. I managed to say it sounded wonderful. I told her to have a great time. When I hung up, I just sat there. The dread solidified into something harder. It was a fact. I was not part of that future. I was a spectator to their lives. A museum exhibit they visited sometimes. I didn't cry. I just felt numb. I walked to the window and watched the snow fall. It was coming down thick, covering everything, making the world quiet and soft. And I thought about a memory, a sharp, clear one. It was from years ago. Ben was maybe 5. We were building a snowman in the backyard. Sarah was laughing, taking pictures. Lisa brought out mugs of hot chocolate. My fingers were freezing, but I didn't care. I was at the center of something. I was necessary. Ben's mittens were wet, and he was crying, and I knelt down and fixed them. In that moment, I was the only person in the world who could fix those mittens. That's what I lost. That sense of being the fixer, the anchor. I wasn't just missing people. I was missing my own usefulness. That night, the snow turned to ice. I lay in bed and listened to the house creak. I thought about the fall, the one where I couldn't get up. I thought, What if it happens again, in the night, in this ice? Marjorie has a cold. Irene is 3 blocks away. The math was different now, but it was still math. The cost of what I'd lost wasn't just loneliness. It was safety. It was the certainty that if you call out, someone who loves you will come running. I don't have that certainty anymore. I have a list of phone numbers. I have kind neighbors. But it's not the same. It will never be the same. I finally understood that. Really understood it, in my gut. I had been trying to build a bridge back to the old world, the world where I was central. And you can't. The bridge is gone. You're on a new shore, a quieter, rockier shore. And you have to learn to live here. Not pretending it's the old place, but really live here. I didn't know how, but for the first time, staring at the ceiling in the dark, I stopped fighting it. I just let the truth sit there with me. This is my shore. This is where I am. This is my shore. This is where I am. And here's what I learned, sitting on this new, quiet shore. I was wrong about what being needed meant. I thought it was about being the fixer, the one with the answers, the one whose calendar mattered. I was waiting for my children to give me back that role. That was my mistake. Love, when your children are grown, doesn't require you to be necessary. It just requires you to be present. And you can be present in a phone call, in a photo they send, in a memory they carry. I spent so much time feeling hurt because Sarah didn't need me to fix her son's mittens anymore, that I missed the fact that she still wanted to tell me about his game. I heard the distraction in her voice, but I didn't hear the love underneath it. It was just packaged differently. It wasn't a hot chocolate on a snowy day. It was a quick call between meetings. It was still love. I had to learn to receive it in its new, smaller currency. And I was wrong about the loneliness, too. I thought it was a problem to be solved, like the quiet was a broken thing I had to fill with noise. But it's not a problem. It's a condition. It's the weather of this later life. Some days are clear and sunny, those Tuesdays with Marjorie, finding a new book from Frank. Some days are cold and gray, and you just have to sit with the chill until it passes. You don't fight it. You put on a sweater. You make a pot of tea. You let yourself miss Eleanor, properly miss her, because that grief is the proof of the love. The empty chair isn't an accusation anymore. It's just her chair. And sometimes, on the good days, it's where Marjorie sits. So my advice, if you're in this place, is this. Stop keeping score. Tear up that ledger in your head about who called who. It will only make you bitter. The people who love you are living lives that are crowded and loud. Forgive them for not hearing your quiet. Then, look sideways, not forward to the busy lives that have moved on, and not just backward to what's gone. Look to your left and your right. That's where your new world is. It's Marjorie next door. It's Frank at the library. It's Irene with her groceries. Don't perform for them. Don't try to be interesting. Just be there. Be the person who notices the cardinal at the feeder. Be the one who returns the book on time. Show up for the coffee, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. That's how you build a shore that can hold you. And there is hope here. It's a quieter hope than the one you're used to. It's not the blazing hope of a career or raising a family. It's the gentle hope of a morning that holds a small plan. The hope that the young man on the bench might nod. The hope that your hip will hold you as you reach for the soup can. The hope that you can still learn something new, not just about history, but about yourself. You learn that you are stronger than the silence. You learn that you can be lonely without being lost. This stage of life, it's not about building a legacy anymore. It's about building a day, a good day, and a good day is enough. You still have time. Maybe not decades, maybe not years in the way you once counted them, but you have now. And now is enough to call someone. Not the someone you're hoping will call you, but the someone you can hear through the wall. Now is enough to walk to the park and feel the sun. Now is enough to be kind to the cashier and have her remember your name. This isn't a consolation prize. This is the real work. This is where you find out who you are when no one is asking you to be anything for them. You get to choose. And that choice, that daily, quiet choosing to be present in your own life, is the most essential thing you will ever do. If this story, my story, has meant something to you, then do something for me. First, don't just listen and nod. Talk back. Down in the comments, tell me one small thing you saw today that you wouldn't have noticed before. A bird, a flower in a crack in the pavement, the way the light hit your kitchen table. Let's start a conversation right here. A conversation between people who understand this quiet shore. Second, if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a parent, a neighbor who seems a little too quiet, share this with them. Just send it. No big speech needed. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say, "I heard this and thought of you." It's a rope across the silence. And please, hit that subscribe button. It's not about numbers for me. It's about building a corner of this platform that isn't loud and frantic, but thoughtful and kind. A place where we can turn the pages together. Every time you click that bell, it tells me to keep going, to keep talking about these things that matter so much and are said so seldom. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.